Afternoon, students. Can you all hear me? We'll just wait a few minutes until the rest of the class joins, and then we'll go through the practical question. Okay, so this is the practical question for this week. This is based on PPE Part 1, which you would have covered in the theory lecture last week. So who of you have done the question? Okay, I hope you all did the question. Okay, so let's go through the question. I'm going to read the question. I've highlighted crucial information that you should take note of. When you are answering a question in a test or an exam or even your tutorials, read through the question and highlight the important information. Then read the required. Then I would recommend, once you have read the required and you understand what is asked of you, then it's important to read through the question again, just to make sure you understood all of the information. Sometimes the information will appear more understandable once you have read the required. So before you answer the question, you need to make sure you understand exactly what the required is asking from you. Okay, so often students will write pages and pages of solution in the test or exam, but often what they are writing does not answer the required. So it's very important that you understand exactly what the required is asking before you start answering the question. Okay, so let's have a look at this question. We have a company called Cars Pty. Cars is in the public transport business and has a 30 June reporting date. Cars purchased a bus that it would use for the rapid bus transport system. So the bus was acquired for 750,000 and was available for use on the 1st of January 2016. So on this date, the bus was purchased. On the 30th of June 2017, the carrying value of the bus was 562,500. So during the year ended 30 June 2018, management realized that the rapid bus transport system was not very popular, and as a result, the bus may be overvalued. Management hired an independent expert who determined the following. So we have the bus could be sold on 30 June 2018 for 430,000. And then they're giving us all of these values here. If the bus wasn't sold, it could be hired out for special events and generate the following cash flows. So they're giving us all of these values, and we're going to have to determine if we can use them somehow. If cars were to borrow funds, they would be charged a market rate of 6% per annum. On 30 June 2019, management estimated that the residual value of the bus needed to be changed to 37,500 with a remaining life of 1 year. Okay. So Kat has asked the question, is brought into use and available for use the same thing? No, it is not. An asset can be available for use and not brought into use. So sometimes an asset is available for use from the 1st of January, but it may only be brought into use later on in the year, maybe on the 1st of March. So I covered this in the theory lecture this morning. when do we start depreciating the asset? When it is available for use or when it is brought into use? Can you guys remember? So I'll repeat the question. When do we start depreciating an asset? When it is available for use or when it is brought into use? Does anyone else know the answer? TJ got the answer right. We depreciate an asset when it is available for use. Okay, so don't be tricked. If they give you a date for available for use and then they tell you that the asset was brought into use a few months later after it was available for use, make sure you're depreciating from the available for use date and not when it was brought into use. Okay, good question. So this is the question here. I'm going to go down to the required now, and we're going to look at the required. Just ignore my diagram. So the required says calculate the carrying value of the bus on 30 June 2019. Okay. So based on the information in the question, I've made a small diagram here. I'm just going to zoom out a bit. Okay, can you all see the diagram? Okay, so what I think is important when they give you lots of information over a few years, it can really help you if you draw a diagram. So when I read this, I was overwhelmed with the amount of information they gave us. So I decided I'm going to draw a diagram of exactly when everything happened to help me understand the scenario. And I would recommend that you do the same. So here they are telling us cars purchased a bus. It was acquired for 750,000 and was available for use on the 1st of January 2016. Okay, they don't tell us when it was acquired. They're just giving us the available for use date, or what says the bus was acquired and was available for use on the 1st of January 2016. So it actually means that the bus was acquired and was available for use on the same date. So in the time diagram here, on the 1st of January 2016, you must take note that an asset was bought or a bus was bought for 750,000. Okay, if you are at home, I want you to draw this timeline on the piece of paper in front of you. The next important date they give us is on the 30th of June 2017. They say that the carrying value on the 30th of June 2017 was 562,500. Okay, so we've put that in our diagram here. Then on the 30th of June 2018, management realized that there could be an indicator of impairment. So we need to test for impairment on the 30th of June 2018. Now, who can tell me what do we do when we calculate an impairment? How do we determine if there's an impairment or not? Who can assist me with this? So how do we determine if there was an impairment or not? So at this stage, I just want to place everything on the time diagram so we can have a big picture of this question, and then we're going to calculate what the depreciation was. But who can tell me how do we determine if there is an impairment? So on the 30th of June, management realized that the bus transport system was not very popular and that the bus may be overvalued. So this is an indicator that there needs to be an impairment test done. So a few people have mentioned we will compare the carrying value against the recoverable amount to assess if there is an impairment. So if the recoverable amount is lower than the carrying value, then there is an impairment and we will have to process an impairment in the books. So when you say recoverable amount, now who can tell me how do we determine the recoverable amount? How do we determine the recoverable amount? What do we need? What information are we looking for? Because we will have to determine the carrying amounts and we will need to compare that to the recoverable amounts. But what is the recoverable amount? I see some people may have their hands up and down, waving. Can anyone tell me, even if you want to unmute your mic?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello. Yeah, recoverable amount is the higher of either fair value in or value in use or fair value less cost to sell.
Correct, 100% correct. Thank you very much. So that is how we determine the recoverable amount. Okay, so it looks like they have given us the fair value here of 430,000. I cannot see any cost to sell. So then we will assume that this is the fair value over here. Okay, and they're giving us this information here, which we are going to use to determine our value in use. But let's carry on with our time diagram, and we'll go to the beginning of our time diagram later. So after that information, so we've put this information here as much as we can. I'll show you how to determine the value in use just now. Then they tell us on the 30th of June 2019, management estimated that the residual value of the bus needed to change to 37,500. Okay, so I put that on the time diagram here. When we get to this date, we need to consider that the residual value needed to change to 37,500, and there was a remaining useful life of 1 year. Okay, so once we put everything on the timeline, we can kind of get a picture of when everything happened. And now we can actually answer the required. So the required says, if we scroll down, calculate the carrying value on the bus on 30 June 2019. Now, how do we determine the carrying amount of the asset on this date? How do we go with all of this information, and in simple terms, how will we calculate the carrying value of the bus on 30 June 2019? What information do we need to know? Surely we need to know what the cost is, and from that cost we will subtract the accumulated depreciation. So the required is asking for the carrying value of the bus on 30 June 2019. They've told us that the cost is 750,000, and we know that we need to somehow get to the carrying value at this date on the 30th of June 2019. So we know that to go from the cost to the carrying amount, we need to subtract the accumulated depreciation. So we need to calculate depreciation for each period, and then we will total the depreciation, and we will get the accumulated depreciation. Okay, so let's go through the information. Let's actually calculate the depreciation for each period, and this will assist us to determine what our carrying amount is. Okay. Okay, so like I said, we need to calculate depreciation for the period 2016 onwards. So how are we going to do this? Okay, they don't seem to have given us a useful life at the beginning of the question. All they told us was that the asset was purchased on the 1st of January 2016. And the next bit of information they give us is that the carrying amount is 562,500 Rand on the 30th of June 2017. Is it possible to calculate the depreciation between this date based on the information given? Okay. MT, I see you have a good solution for us. So what if we take the cost of 750,000 and subtract the carrying amount on the 30th of June 2017? What is the difference between the cost on this date of the 1st of January 2016 and the carrying amount on the 30th of June 2017? What is the difference between these two numbers? Surely the difference between these two numbers actually relates to the depreciation. Do you guys agree with me? So let's go through the information. Okay, so So the difference between these two numbers is 187,500 Rand, okay? So I agree, that relates to the accumulated depreciation for this period. How many months is this period for? Is it a year or is it longer? So if we go from 1st of January 2016 to 30 June 2017, it is actually 18 months, okay? Because so we're not going for a year or 6 months. The difference between this period, if you look carefully at the date, it's 1st of January 2016 all the way to 30 June 2017. So in actual fact, the amount of depreciation between this period was calculated as 187,500, and that is actually for 18 months. So let me put this depreciation amount here. You all got it right, of 187,500. And remember, we said this was for 18 months, okay? So now my question is, based on this information, how will we calculate the depreciation from 30 June 2017 to 30 June 2018? How are we going to determine this depreciation? Assuming that it continues in the same way as it did here. So remember, we're trying to calculate the depreciation here from 30 June 2017 to 30 June 2018. What time period is that? Who can tell me? What is the time period between these two boxes here? So we're going from 30 June 2017 to 30 June 2018. How many months is that? Okay, it is 1 year, it is 12 months. So we need to determine what is our depreciation between these two time periods, 30 June 2017 and 30 June 2018. So it is 12 months. So is it possible to take this depreciation amount here of 187,500, and remember that was for 18 months. Is it possible now to calculate this for 12 months? So how are we going to do it? So I think it makes sense to take the 187,500 divided by 18 months and then times 12, and then surely that will give us the depreciation for this period. I see some of you have already started calculating it. Well done. So this depreciation here was for 12 months. So we're going to take the 187,500 and we're going to divide it by 18 months. Okay, we're going to divide it by 18 months and we're going to then times it by 12 months, and then this will give us the depreciation over there. And most of you calculated it correctly. The depreciation for the period 30 June 2017 to 30 June 2018, it is 125,000 Rand. Okay, are you guys all happy with this? So you understand how we calculated the depreciation here. So for the depreciation here, we simply went 1st of January 2016 and we had the cost, and then we had the carrying amount on 30 June 2017. So the difference between these two numbers here is simply the depreciation of 187,500. Okay, so you're all happy with that, I hope. You're simply subtracting the two. Then, to determine the depreciation between 30 June 2017 and 30 June 2018, we needed to take this depreciation for 18 months and then we needed to calculate it as if it was for 12 months. So we went 187,500 divided by 18 times 12. So this gave us 125,000 Rand of depreciation. Okay, so are you all happy with how we calculated the depreciation for this period? Now, when we get to 30 June 2018, we know that there's an impairment indicator, okay? So there's an indication that an impairment review needs to be done, okay? So we discussed earlier that an impairment was going to be assessed, and we would need to determine what is our carrying amount, and we would need to compare this to our recoverable amount, okay? And I asked you what was the recoverable amount, and you agreed that for the recoverable amount, to determine the recoverable amount, we need to take our fair value less cost to sell, okay? They gave us our fair value, or they say here the bus could be sold on 30 June 2018 for 430,000. So we've given our fair value here of 430,000, but we need to determine our value in use. Now, how are we going to determine our value in use? Can anyone assist me? We've been given cash flows here. It says if the bus wasn't sold, it could be hired out for special events and generate the following cash flows. So they've given us cash flows for the next 3 years. Now, how do we determine our value in use from the cash flows? Can anyone assist me? Okay, so you're saying we need to use the table, okay? That is one option. I actually didn't think about using the table because I know how to present value all of these cash flows. Okay, so you can look at the table and you can get a present value factor and you can apply it to these amounts. Let me show you how I calculated it. But you guys are correct. We need to determine the present value of the cash flows. And let me show you how I did it. And I'm sure you guys would have done the same thing. Okay, so when we have our cash flows here, so think about where we are. We're at the 30th of June 2018, and we're forecasting ahead. We're telling ourselves, if we don't sell the bus, we can use this bus and we can generate a value from this bus in the form of cash flows. So if we use this bus, we can generate a cash flow of 200,000 in 2019. And then we can generate a cash flow of 200,000 in 2020. And then a further cash flow of 100,000 in 2021. Now you all agree, most of you have said on the table that these cash flows need to be discounted. Why are we discounting these cash flows? Who can tell me why we are discounting these cash flows? Why can't we just add them together and get the value in use of 500,000? Why do we need to discount them? Who can assist me? Okay, in Benny and Escumede both say we need to determine the present value because of time value of money. Okay, I do agree with you. We need to present value these. These cash flows occur in the future, but we want the value in use today. So we need to take the future amounts and we need to present value them. Okay, so you can use the tables. I actually didn't think of that when I was doing this. I just applied the formula that I know, okay? So if we take the 200,000 in 2019, do you agree this is 1 year away? So we need to present value this for 1 year. So our time period here is 1 year. So we simply take the 200,000 and we divide it by 1 plus our interest rate, which is 6%. So you have to express it as 0.06 to the time period of 1, because this future cash flow is 1 year away. And then that will give us a present value here of 188,679. Do you guys get the same thing? If you use the present value table quickly, you should get the same answer here. Okay, so that was for the cash flow 1 year away in 2019. Okay, there will be slight rounding differences. If you use the table, you might get a value of 188,600, which is correct. You'll notice it is slightly off from my value here. And the reason for this is that those present value factors, they're actually rounded, okay? So if you want to determine the present value factor in your book, you'll simply go 1 divided by 1 plus 0.06 to the power of 1, and that will give you the present value factor in the table. But in the table, they can't put 10 or 20 decimal places. It's not practical. So that present value factor in your textbook or in that page that was given to you is actually rounded, okay? But it will still be marked correct in a test or exam. So don't fret. But if for some reason you don't have the table, you can determine the present value this way here. So let's do the same for the cash flow in 2020. So that cash flow of 200,000 in 2020, do you agree that is 2 years away? Okay, it is going to take place in 2 years' time. So we need to present value that 200,000. We need to present value it for 2 years. So we will take our cash flow expected in 2020, which is essentially year 2, and we will say 200,000 divided by 1 plus 0.06 to the power of 2. Okay, someone is saying, shouldn't you put a negative exponent after the bracket? But I am dividing here. If you look at this line, that is my divide sign. Okay. If you put a negative exponent, you won't get the correct answer because I'm already dividing, okay? So if you put it on your calculator, you should get this, but this here needs to be at the bottom of the divide sign. So you're saying 200,000 divided by this. So it's almost like a fraction. This is at the top of the fraction, and this is at the bottom of the fraction, okay? So you're saying 200,000, which is your cash flow in year 2, divided by 1.06 to the power of 2. And this will give you a present value of 177,999 and 29 cents. Okay. Do you guys get this one? So you should get something similar if you are applying the present value factor in the table. It'll just be slightly rounded differently. So someone said, if you use the present value factor in the tables, you'll get 178,000. And you can see it's simply 71 cents off. So they're both correct, okay? It is just rounding. Then if you look at the last cash flow in 2021, we have 100,000. So we expect the cash flow of 100,000 in 2021. So that is essentially 3 years away. So we need to present value this cash flow for 3 years. So we're going to take 100,000 and we're going to say divided by 1.06. And because it is 3 years, we are going to have a present value of 3. And this is going to give us a present value of 83,961 and 93 cents. You guys all get this amount. If you use the table, what do you guys get? Okay, so Alim used the table and got 84,000. Okay, so you can see it's off by a fraction, a very small amount, so it is also correct. Okay, but do you guys understand this way? It's also useful to do it this way. If for some reason you can't find a table, you can also present value it this way. So now we have present valued our cash flows for the next 3 years, okay? Now we need to total them to determine what is our value in use. So if we total our cash flows to determine our value in use, we'll get 450,640, and I got 47 cents. But it doesn't really matter if it is slightly off. Okay, if you use the tables, you'll get a slightly different answer. But it is still correct. The difference is merely due to rounding. So in those tables, the present value factor is rounded. Okay. So now we have our value in use, and I have put our value in use over here being 450,640. And remember, our fair value, what less cost to sell, was 430,000. So what is our recoverable amount? If we are comparing these two, what is our recoverable amount? Okay, so our recoverable amount is the higher of the two. So do you agree that our recoverable amount is 450,640 Rand? Okay, now what do we compare our recoverable amount to? So we have determined that our recoverable amount is 450,640. But what do we what do we compare that amount to? You're correct. We need to compare it to the carrying amount or carrying value. So now what is our carrying value at the 30th of June 2018? Remember, we had a cost of 750,000. And now we need to go from that 750,000 to our carrying amount on the 30th of June 2018. So our starting point is going to be the cost of 750,000. And we need to subtract the accumulated depreciation for this period. So remember, our accumulated depreciation from the 1st of January 2016 to the 30th of June 2017 was 187,500. We determined that to be our accumulated depreciation. And then we use that, remember that was for 18 months, and we divided it by 18 and multiplied by 12. And we use that to determine our accumulated depreciation for the period from 30 June 2017 to 30 June 2018. Our accumulated depreciation at that date was 125,000. So if we subtract all of this depreciation here, we will get a carrying amount of 431,500. I see a lot of you got it correct. So let's just add that in here. Our carrying amount is 437,500. Do you guys all agree that that is our carrying amount? And how did we get it? I see MT has put the calculation there for us, okay? We started with our cost of 750,000, and then we subtracted our depreciation for this period, which is 187,500, which is simply broken down in MT's calculation. And then we subtracted our depreciation of 125,000 for the year between 30 June 2017 to 30 June 2018. So now you told me earlier that to determine if there is an impairment, we need to compare the carrying amount to the recoverable amount. And then remember we said that the recoverable amount was the higher of the fair value less cost to sell or value in use. So the value in use is clearly the higher of the two. So if we compare the value in use to the carrying amount, is there an impairment loss? Okay, why is there no impairment loss? You are correct. Why is there no impairment? Because the value in use is higher than the carrying amount. Do you guys all understand that? Is it clear? So we are assessing if there is an impairment. We have determined the carrying amount or carrying value to be 437,500, and we are comparing that to the value in use of 450,640. So because the value in use is higher than the carrying amount, i.e. the recoverable amount is higher than the carrying amount, there is no impairment. Okay. Is that all clear, guys? You're happy that there's no impairment? Then remember, the whole aim of this, we are trying to determine the carrying amount on the 30th of June 2019. So we've determined our depreciation for the last 2.5 years. Now we need to determine what is our depreciation from 30 June 2018 to 30 June 2019. So remember, they told us here on the 30th of June 2019, before the depreciation had been passed for the year, management estimated that the residual value of the bus needed to be changed to 37,500 with a remaining useful life of 1 year on this date. Okay, so what does that mean? On this date, 30 June 2019, our carrying amount is 437,500, but we need to calculate our depreciation for this period. So how do we determine our depreciation? We need to take our amount of 437,500 minus the residual value of 375,000, and then we need to ask ourselves, what is the useful life? Okay, so the useful life they are giving us is 1 year, but this useful life is from the 30th of June 2019. So they're saying that the useful life is 1 year from 30 June 2019 going forward, which means on the 30th of June 2018, the useful life is actually 2. Okay, this may sound confusing, but let's read it again. Okay, I would have added in a few extra words to make it more understandable. On 30 June 2019, before depreciation had been passed, management estimated that the residual value of the bus needed to be changed to 37,500 with a remaining useful life of 1 year on 30 June 2019. So on 30 June 2019, we haven't calculated the depreciation yet. We know that the recoverable, that the residual value is 37,500, and we know that from the 30 June 2019, the remaining useful life from that date going forward is 1 year, which means from 30 June 2018, the remaining useful life is 2 years. Okay. So we need to calculate our depreciation for 2019, and we are going to do this by taking the carrying amount of 437,500 minusing the residual value of 37,500 and dividing that by 2. So what is this going to give us? If we're dividing it by 2 years remaining useful life. That's going to give us 200,000 depreciation for the period 30 June 2018 to 30 June 2019. So let's write it here just to make sure we all know what we're doing. We're taking the carrying amount of 437,500. And because we are calculating our depreciation, we need to subtract the residual value of 37,500. So remember, on the 30th of June 2019, we have not processed our depreciation relating from 30 June 2018 to 30 June 2019. So this updated estimate of the residual value that we have been given is applicable when we calculate the depreciation on 30 June 2018 to 30 June 2019. And then when we are told that the remaining useful life is 2 years, that the remaining useful life is 1 year, they are giving that remaining useful life from 30 June 2019. So if the remaining useful life from 30 June 2019 is 1 year going forward, how do we determine this depreciation? Okay, I see a lot of you are confused. So Escomeda is correct. We are using a useful life of 2 years because we are including the current period. So if I'm telling you from 30 June 2019, the useful life 1 year going forward, we need to add in that 1 year relating to the current period. So the useful life when we're determining our depreciation is actually for 2 years because it takes into account this 1 year relating to the current period and then the 1 year after this period. So 1 plus 1 is 2. Okay, are you guys all happy with that? So our depreciation for the year ending 30 June 2019, what is our depreciation? And I think many of you might have calculated it already. Our depreciation for that year is 200,000. Okay, do you guys understand this? I'll say it one more time. So on 30 June 2019, before depreciation had been processed for this year, management estimated the residual value of the bus needed to be changed to 37,500, with a remaining useful life of 1 year from that date. So from 30 June 2019, the asset has a remaining useful life of 1 year. But remember, we need to add this 1 year relating to the current year. Okay, so when we calculate the depreciation for this period, can you guys see my arrow? When you calculate the depreciation for this period, we are dividing by 2 years because this is the 1 year and then this is the other year. So this gives us depreciation for 30 June 2019 of 200,000. So therefore, how do we answer our question? Our question was, what is the carrying value of the bus on 30 June 2019? So how do we determine this carrying value? We're going to take the cost of 750,000 and we're going to subtract all of the accumulated depreciation for the various periods. So remember, in the period from 1st of January 2016 to 30 June 2017, that was 18 months. We calculated our depreciation as 187,500. Then we needed to calculate our depreciation from 30 June 2017 to 30 June 2018. And we determined the depreciation at that date was 125,000. Okay. We did determine the carrying amount at 30 June 2018 to be 437,500. We were happy that there was no impairment because the recoverable amount, which related to the value in use, was higher than the carrying amount. So there's no impairment. Then we determined our depreciation on 30 June 2019 as 200,000. So what carrying amount does that give us on the 30th of June 2019? What did you guys get? Okay, I see a lot of you are getting the answer correct and are getting the same answer that I am getting. So I must be correct. The carrying amount at 30 June 2019 is 237,500. So that answers are required. Obviously, to get to this, you have to show all the other workings, okay? So when you are writing a test or exam, you need to make sure you are showing all the workings, because sometimes there are method marks and part marks available. So you would need to show all of this. And then if for some reason you made a mistake and you calculated your carrying amount incorrectly on the 30th of June 2019, often there will be part marks if you showed all of your workings. Okay. Do you guys have any questions that you want to ask on this? Any questions? Okay, you guys are very quiet. Any questions? Okay. If there was an impairment, what would we have to do? Who can answer that? If there was an impairment, what would happen to our carrying amount? What happens if your value in use was actually lower than your carrying amount? Okay, if your value in use was lower than your carrying amount, then you would have an impairment, and your carrying amount would be reduced by your impairment. And then obviously our carrying amount would change, and that would in turn change our depreciation. So then this amount would change based on that. Okay, so guys, that is the end of this question. Before you go, I want to do a poll. I need to stop sharing my content. So we have had a request from one student to have the tutorial at 8 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock. So I need to determine what you guys actually want, okay? So I'm going to attempt to do a poll. I just need to figure it out first, because I have not used a poll as yet. Okay, I've tried to do a poll. I'm just not really sure how to do it. Polling, okay. Multiple choice. Okay, if you guys could just, I'm just writing the poll. Do you want to have a tutorial at 8 a.m. or 6 p.m.? So your first answer choice is going to be 8 a.m. And your second answer choice is going to be 6 p.m. Okay, so I've released the poll. Do you want
8
to
is
have...
fine.
Okay, could you guys vote? Can you vote? And then I'll take the voting to the other lecturers, and then we can see what we can do. Maybe there's a chance we could have one tutorial at 8 and one at 6 to accommodate both of you. I'm not sure if this is possible. I know everyone has different commitments. Some people want to do their chores in the morning, and some people want to do their chores in the evening, and there's nothing wrong with that. We all have different commitments in our lives. So let's vote according to this. If you could all vote which tutorial you want. So it says, do you want to have the tutorial at 8 a.m. or 6 p.m.? If you want the tutorial at 8 a.m., please vote for that one. If you want the tutorial at 6 p.m., please vote for that one. Okay. So then we'll have a look and we'll see what we can do. But we just need an indication of numbers. And it doesn't really help when there's only 100 of you on here. Okay, so there's still 16 people that haven't responded. If you haven't responded yet, please vote. If you have a WhatsApp group with your fellow students, message them and tell them to join quickly and vote so we can get an indication of when the best time is to have the tutorial. Okay, there's 11 people that haven't voted. If you haven't voted yet, please vote. Okay, there's 11 people that are on here that maybe have muted me because they're tired of my voice. Please message your friends and tell them to vote. Okay, there's still 10 people that haven't voted yet. We'll leave the voting open for 1 more minute. Okay, there's 6 people that haven't responded, which isn't too bad. If they're very divided and they can't decide whether they want the tutorial at 8 a.m. or 6 p.m., that's fine. We'll have to go with who's voted. Okay. So I'll send the voting poll to the other lecturers and we'll see what we can do. I'm not promising anything, okay? We just wanted to get an indication of when most people want to have the tutorial. We'll see what we can do, okay? Okay, guys, if you have no further questions on the practical, then I'll put the solution on Blackboard and you guys can go through it again in your own time. If you have no questions, that's fine. If you do have a question, you can ask now, or you are welcome to email me whenever you go through the question and the questions arise. Just pop me an email or the other lecturers, whoever you want to ask, and we'll do our best to answer your question. Okay, that is it from me, guys. Does anyone want to say anything? Are you all happy? Okay. Okay, guys. Thank you very much for attending and for voting. It was great watching you guys chat on the group. I'll chat to Mrs. Adams about the quiz solution, okay, and see if those are made available. I can't remember if we make those available or not. Okay. Thanks, guys. If there's no other questions, then I'll just end the session or I'll wait for you to leave, okay? So you guys are welcome to leave if you're happy with everything. Oh, the results of the poll, can you not see it? Well, it seems to be quite divided at this stage. 6 people haven't voted, but it seems to be like half are voting for 8 a.m. and half are voting for 6 p.m. 6 p.m. has slightly more votes at this stage, so we'll just have to see what we can do, okay? Okay, I'm going to close this session. Bye, students.
Guys, which practical question were you doing? I missed the session. Guys, which question did you guys do? Yo. Which practical question did you guys do? Was it question one, question two, or question three? Somewhere there. That's my question, guys.
Hello? Hello? Is anyone here? I mean,
Hello, yeah, sure. I was asking about the question. Which practical question did you guys do? Was it question one, question two, question three?
there was only one question to today's practical.